After a couple of years being stuck on Sony's PSVR headset, Marvel's Iron Man VR has landed on Meta Quest 2. With this new release comes a new way to suit up as the Armoured X-Alki. Gone are the PSVR's mess of cables and dodgy wand controllers, replaced now with the freedom of wireless play and controllers with proper sticks and buttons. But is it any better? The short answer is yes, though it's not without its flaws. Marvel's Iron Man VR takes players through an original story that pits Tony Stark against a little-known enemy named Ghost, among others. It's a by-the-numbers story. Honestly, I didn't much care for it. The outcomes were very predictable, without any real surprises. A bit like most MCU movies then. That said, it did at least manage to avoid the cringe writing that the MCU has devolved into over the past decade, so thumbs up on that count. While I am a little bit disappointed to not get my gritty Nolan-style Iron Man game that explores the damaged psyche of an alcoholic who has the ability to drink and fly and start a one-man war, I'll take what I can get. And what Camouflage has delivered is a solid Iron Man experience. From wandering around Stark's Malibu home to soaring through the skies and blasting enemies to smithereens, Camouflage has given us a glimpse into what it would be like to be a metal-coated superhero, if only for a few hours. Now, full disclaimer, I've actually played Marvel's Iron Man VR before, albeit briefly. I have the game for PSVR, but despite being a big proponent of Sony's debut goggles, I really couldn't get behind the game on that particular headset. The controls were just too fiddly, and with the light-based tracking and the inherent dangers that come from turning on the spot with a thick cable trailing beside, around and beneath me, I gave it up before I even managed to beat the tutorial. Thankfully, on Meta Quest 2, things are a little bit easier. The controls still rely on you moving your hands to dictate how you fly around. To fly up or take off, you have to face your palms downward, just as Iron Man does in the movies to take off. Slamming your feet together and moaning about being a solo Avenger is completely optional, but I threw it in there all the same. Once you're up in the air, moving around is done by tilting your wrists. Face them forwards to go backwards, and backwards to go forwards, and so on. Turning can be a little tricky, but if you enable stick turning in the settings, you can get around much easier with a more traditional stick turning input method. Despite the easier inputs, I still spent my first half an hour floating around clumsily, bashing into everything in sight. But I did eventually warm to the controls, so much so that I was able to thread the needle through the rock formations outside of Tony's house, weave through skyscrapers in Shanghai, and even the tight interiors of the SHIELD helicarrier, all while firing off rockets and propulsion beams from my hands, which actually makes up about 90% of the gameplay. The game's missions are fairly simplistic and they do fall into the trap of repetition. The simple recipe is fly around, destroy a few drones, get some exposition in the earpiece, and then back to blasting bots. Some missions mix it up by throwing in bombs on a timer or defending something from waves of enemies. You're also treated to some by the VR book hands-on interaction, whether it be picking up a phone or ripping a door off a wall. Nothing unexpected, but all pretty cool nonetheless. While the game's combat is great fun, blasting a crowd of drones with a beam from Iron Man's chest will never not be cool. It isn't perfect, and that's more on the technical limitations of the headset than the game itself. I noticed far too often that when things got a little bit crazy, the frame rate would drop. Not a disgusting amount, mind you, and it was never bad enough to break the game, render it unplayable, or make me sick, but it was enough that I would notice the slowdown and the judder. It's a shame because graphically the game looks great when you consider what it's running on and what it was originally developed for, and the crystal clear image is a real joy, but the hiccups are there, and they are noticeable. Between missions, you're taken out of the suit and dropped into Tony's gaff for a bit more exposition, albeit in person with your AI assistants, Friday, the pretty Brit, and Gunsmith, the AI built in Stark's own image. These moments tended to drag on longer than I would have liked, but there is some purpose to these between mission hangouts. You can explore Tony's house and find fun little nods to the wider world, or play an arcade basketball minigame, and, most importantly, upgrade the suit. You're scored for your performance in missions with a ranking between 1 and 5 stars. Get 5 stars, get 5 upgrade points. Easy. These points can be used to tweak the Iron Man suit across 2 loadouts, or you can completely ignore it and not really suffer the consequences. I found the upgrades to be inconsequential, and I wasn't punished for not making use of them. Still, for a bit of replay value, they're nice to have, as you'll have to replay missions to get full star ratings. Replayability also comes in the form of leaderboards, achievements and time trials, where you'll run through races to try to beat the set times by the game's development team. These were bloody hard. I felt like a true hero during the story, but I was quickly humbled after tackling some of these challenges. I'll get those scores one day. Maybe. Probably not. Marvel's Iron Man VR is a decent game no matter where you play it, though I would argue that the MetaQuest 2 version is perhaps the best way to play thanks to its ease of use and cleaner visuals. The intuitive controls, fun aerial combat, and quality presentation make for a heroic effort by developer Camouflage and a worthy addition to any Quest 2 library. And that is the end of this review. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, if you enjoyed this video and found it useful, please do us a solid and go on down below, hit the like and subscribe buttons, and don't forget the bell icon so that you stay notified whenever we've got new stuff. I've been Chris, you've been gorgeous, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, cheers my dears.
No, we should get back to more serious business.
Understood.